That theme music means that this is Let's Talk Colon Radio. And today we have Charles Schultz, Paul Raphael, and the triumphant return of Stephen Hurwitz.
Welcome back, Steve.
With brand new eyes. He has new eyes now.
He was blind, but now he can see.
Yes,
he
exactly.
can see everything clearly now. Isn't there a song? I can see clearly now.
I
should have brought that.
Oh, well, easily found. Let's see. This is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR. What is the topic for today?
The topic for today is geoengineering. What is that, you might say?
Am I supposed to provide a definition?
Geoengineering.
I think it's the idea that to fix the problem of pollution,
global warming,
you could
lower rainfall,
or ocean acidification, or you name it. That there are geo-entrepreneurs that can bring new technologies into play to help solve these problems. By doing things like trying to make the atmosphere more reflective so less solar radiation gets in, or the fellow up in the Pacific Northwest who was going to dump a lot of iron into the ocean with the thought that this would help prevent acidification, or indeed our own John Wick of Nicasio, who was trying to sequester carbon by spreading compost over fields.
I think you can sequester carbon. It's called trees.
Well, that is another form of geoengineering, of course, which is afforestation. There are many things. They're researching ways, and some would say they're already doing this. Spraying aerosols into the air and into the stratosphere, up above 30,000 feet or so, to reflect sunlight. Provide coverage, make the atmosphere more reflective, and block sunlight a little bit. Trying to see if that would work. And this is, there are other things. Let me get to those too. But that's what chemtrails. The scare about chemtrails is all about, which is these contrails in the sky that are persistent. You see them. Sometimes they're in checkerboard formations, and they will spread. Instead of dispersing, they spread out. And I've seen, over Marshall, the sky turn silver. Now, whether those are actually chemtrails, whether there is a shady, or maybe it's the Department of Defense or somebody.
I know one of our listeners knows about
spraying us with
I'm sure somebody
heavy
will call
metals. Of some kind. Well, yes, do call in. 415-663-8492. Anyway, that's one of the things that they are actually working on. Another one is cloud seeding, which has been going on for a long time. There's actually there are several companies. There's one that's actually called Weather Modification Incorporated. I think they're in North Dakota, and they do cloud seeding. That's what they do. They have planes that seed cloud. They spray, usually silver iodide, I think. PG&E's been doing it up in at one of their hydro dams up in
Sierra somewhere?
Northern California, up in where is it? Anyway, no, it's further north. It's more like the Trinities, I think it's in. And they wanted to do it around Mount Shasta too, but Mount Shasta being the place that it is, they all came out against it a few years ago, I think. But they've been doing that for 50 years up in the Trinities. So cloud seeding, solar radiation management. This is all solar radiation management. And another idea is putting space mirrors up.
It's great. And doesn't it have this wonderful science fiction flavor? Who doesn't want a good space mirror?
And then there's carbon dioxide removal, removing carbon dioxide or too much of it from the atmosphere, forestation, capture from the air. I'm not sure how they're actually going to do that, but they're working on
actually pumping it into the ground
mechanisms
or
to
into
do
the
that,
deep ocean.
CO2 capture from fossil fuels plus storage. They're pumping it down into old fracking holes and
Carbon in, carbon out.
And ocean iron fertilization, which is what
Has
this
that
guy
been tried? I mean,
I think that guy did try, but I think he got into a lot of trouble.
He didn't tell anybody. He was a millionaire up off Haida Gwaii, up in Queen Charlotte's, up in...
the thought of algae blooms all across the oceans, that sounds like a really
there's a
hot thing to do.
Well, there's a common denominator with all of these things. None of them address the root causes of the production of CO2, right? So even somebody, like I talked to John Wick, our neighbor here in Nicasio, it's too late. And this is the common refrain across all of these different ideas. It's too late, right? So the only hope now is to sequester carbon. And so it's a question of, hey, shouldn't we shut some of these power plants down and replace the carbon-based fuel supply with a non-carbon-based fuel supply? Or shouldn't we make all of our buildings more energy efficient? Or shouldn't we try these other things? They're really quite dismissive of that because the too late refrain is in there. My old neighbor, Matt Kyler, lovely fellow, he used to say, Paul Fenn's a genius, but it's too late. The Gates Foundation is going to do something with the clouds, and they've been studying this. So it's a really common view. And
I hold that, by the way.
Yeah, well, and also it's one that absolutely excludes the idea of democracy. It's not interested in some kind of either A, reducing the carbon emissions, or B, having some kind of democratic approach to the way in which these technologies are deployed. They're just going to do it.
Well, that's right, yeah. And that's part of the...
And the track record's been so good. Excuse me.
Well, no, it hasn't. This is the thing. I mean, cloud seeding, this up in PG&E, I think they've never actually been shown to actually improve their hydroelectric output or anything. But why did this come about? I was reading a New York Times thing, and that there's a lot of information coming out right now about all this, about all these methods, because they're really getting serious about it. Harvard and Oxford and all the main universities are starting to do research and doing it seriously. I mean, there's big money behind this now. And if the government isn't going to do something about it, then the money will come from, as you say, the Gates Foundation and other billionaires.
Well, I think that if Oxford and Harvard are into it, so... there must be something really positive and great about it.
Maybe.
Well, there's a lot of grant money to be doled out.
Yeah, these are the universities that also gave us, nuclear. The professors at those institutions gave us nuclear weapons and things like that.
Call in 1-415-663-8492. Especially if you believe in chemtrails. I'm not sure where I stand on chemtrails. I until they were pointed out to me. That I was in Fairfax one day a couple of years, 3 years ago, in the parking lot outside the supermarket. Looked up, and sure enough, there was this pattern of contrails at right angles to each other. So not as if they were all going into SFO, they were crisscrossing the sky and spreading out. And I've seen it in Marshall as well. Now, Richard Dillman, for example, would say it's just contrails, and that's what most people say. They poo-poo any idea, but I'm not sure that I ever have seen. I spend a lot of time on the ocean. I certainly never saw that on the ocean.
I think it's the thing that people are suspicious, whether chemtrails are real or not. It is certainly true that there are these scientists who have also become commercial interests themselves, that are also the CEOs of their own startup companies, that are trying to do things like the one I sent to you, Paul. I hope you have that printed out somewhere. I go actually look it up. The SPICE project in England, which was I'll look up what SPICE technically means. Maybe you've got SPICE, but they're trying to send a balloon up into the atmosphere. In this case, only a kilometer. It was just a proof of concept, and with a hose attached to it to spray water droplets and to see if it worked. And the thing that stopped it was not this huge outcry from scientists in the UK. It was the fact that one of the members of the team, or two of them, tried to get a patent without telling the other ones.
Right, that's the only thing that stopped them.
Yeah, commercial competition.
And there was outcry against it, of course.
But you're right, though. The money's there, and you follow the money.
We have a caller. Hi, caller. You are on the air. What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Ken Levin, and Steve just pretty much mentioned what I wanted to share, which was that it's not so much whether geoengineering is going to work, it's whether there's money in it for the companies, corporations who are going to be exercising it, and as you mentioned, new startups to help this stuff proliferate.
Right.
And I think geoengineering is just a solution for the problems that we've caused, and I don't think it's the same kind of solution as colonizing Mars. I mean,
right.
let's try more technology, throw more technology at the problems that we've created with technology.
I have a natural suspicion of anything that's being done. I mean,
Yeah.
we've gone to this space trusting science, and we're going to trust them to get us out of it now?
That's right. That's my feeling, and actually, parenthetically, that's my feeling about Caltrans and replacing the Green Bridge here.
Geoengineering of the Green Bridge.
Why trust them? How well have they fixed the Bay Bridge? And,
is that Caltrans?
We're off subject.
Well, I mean, I think it's right in the sense anybody who lives on the shoreline in West Marin is dealing now with these 50 and 100-year projections of scientists and universities about what sea level rise is going to do to their home. And I'd say, on the one hand, yeah, it's true that there are going to be effects from climate change. On the other hand, the idea that these scientists have given us the final word on what is going to happen, and so we must now plan today for what's going to happen in 100 years. And the approach that the Coastal Commission is taking, and it has been, get the houses out of there. So anybody who has a house in the water in coastal California, certainly in Northern California, get ready for the Coastal Commission using science, using with the big stamp on it, to tell them that they got to take their house down and move someplace else.
Because we know exactly what's going to happen, what nature's going to do 100 years from now.
Well, and remember, this never addresses the root causes. I said this at the Coastal Commission in Half Moon Bay. It never addresses the root causes of pollution. So the Coastal Commission that regulates the refiners and the drillers and the ports in coastal California, they never go to those guys and say, hey, we're going to have to do something different. They say, oh, well, it's a fait accompli. You have to get rid of your house now because we can't stop Shell. Shell's
Just get rid of Marshall.
Yeah, because Shell just does what it does. That's nature, right? I mean, you can't stop that.
They don't really understand on a human level what they're doing.
I think they do in the sense they're cowards because they wouldn't take on a really powerful enemy, but they have no problem taking on homeowners. Right. That's fine.
So we're talking about distrust of science, of scientists and what they're telling us, which, of course, feeds into the chemtrails thing. If scientists are saying, oh, no, we're not doing anything, then, I think there's enough distrust in the government and science in general out there that who's going to believe them? My feeling would be that if the technology exists, that somebody is going to try it, whether they tell us about it or not.
If it's going to make money.
If it's going to make money, or if it's going to, if they can profit somehow from controlling the climate, and say, hey, we did it, we're the ones. Or whatever that means.
Well, it just occurred to me, I just saw something about owning the weather. They want to own the seeds and now the weather. But I'm just wondering, aren't you stealing somebody else's water if you seed the clouds that would have gone somewhere else and fallen?
There was a big outcry, PG&E. Every so often they apply for another permit to seed clouds up there in on Lake Almanor, I think it is, Lake Almanor. And the people downwind, always, there's a couple of, there are ranches and fishing spots and all this sort of stuff, and they object to it, but PG&E usually gets their way, and they just shoot silver iodide up in the air from a ridgetop, hoping to seed clouds.
Human beings continuing to upset whatever balance nature is trying to maintain.
Exactly, and it's and silver iodide is poisonous to fish. So,
well, and remember, I'll
go on and on.
I'll repeat the point again: is that none of these experiments or ideas say we need to emit less carbon. They're all because, and this is within the logic of our economic system, is you couldn't have degrowth. You couldn't have less growth. You have to have more growth. So you can't stop pollution. You just need a new
Mitigate it.
market-based solution, a new business to solve the problem of the old business.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's cheap, basically, this stuff. They're talking about spraying sulfuric acid into the stratosphere as a reflectant.
Sulfur dioxide, yeah.
Good.
Sulfur dioxide and sulfuric acid. And calcite now is the big thing they're all talking about. Putting calcium carbonate, because it's cheap. It's everywhere.
And who are the people that run these chemicals? Syngenta, DuPont.
Right.
These are the big chemical companies.
Bosch.
Chemical companies.
They just
yes, of
bought
course.
Monsanto.
Yeah, I mean, the other point again is that this is utterly undemocratic. If you go and you talk to scientists at Cal, they have such a profound contempt for any kind of democratic institution or democratic control of these questions. It has a very deep history in Western civilization, goes all the way back to Plato, that says, if you want to build a bridge, you get a bridge expert. If you want to run a society, you get a societal expert. If you want to run a climate, you get a climate expert. But the idea that people themselves should have a say in how resources are used or what the goals of our society should be, that's intolerable. So there's a tremendous amount of arrogance and contempt. And I'll give you an example how it works in popular cultures, and this is a real Marin phenomenon. Paul Hawken just put out a book. Of course, he just put his name on the cover, but I don't know if he wrote anything in it, maybe a foreword, which is 50 ideas to save the world. And some of them are kind of interesting about, passive solar design or different ways of doing agriculture. You know what one of those 50 ideas is not there? Democracy. Because these people, and Stuart Brand is a great example of them, they have absolute contempt for the idea that we could make rational choices ourselves. That's just not possible.
Like electing our president.
Well, you take it to a scale in which it does become absurd, so it has to become a local question about what we're going to do. And locally you get, these are real neoliberal ideas. I mean that in a very strict technical sense. But John Wick and Peter Barnes are neoliberals. They don't see a role, for democratic control. They do see a role for these interventions in the climate by the entrepreneur, by the real dynamic character of our society, the climate entrepreneur. And I think that there are flaws that they don't recognize. I mean, they don't like that term neoliberal when it's applied to them because they know it's a bad word. But that is the essence of what they're proposing.
Yeah, the market will own the
That's
skies, the commons.
You have to expand.
Anyway,
markets.
caller.
Yes.
Thank you for calling. And do you have, just out of interest, do you think that chemtrails are real? That they have been spraying us already? Or
I'm sure that they exist. What we on the ground can know for sure is unclear, but. If somebody had the idea and there was a way to make some money, I'm sure they're doing it. And who has jurisdiction anyway? They don't have to ask the local coastal commission.
Well, this is it. This is it. The sky is no limit.
Well, the SPICE project, it stands for Stratospheric Particle Injection for Climate Engineering. Yeah. This is a project the Bristol University and Cambridge University came up with. And again, all the outcry of the scientific community that this will not work. One, it will not work, and it should not be done. Two things.
Because you're changing the climate. And
I
the
just
climate
think scientific engineering term is an anathema to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for calling. That's great.
Okay.
I just have this distrust.
Thank you, Ken.
Take care.
I just have this inborn distrust of all these solutions.
So what's...
No, well, they would say you're the problem, though, right?
The distrust.
Because they would say GMOs, we need them, but people like Steve won't let us do it.
I've been the problem in a lot of
GMOs. GMOs are going to feed the world.
Well, I mean, of course, the United States wastes half of the food that it produces. Right. It throws it away. Yep. But we still need GMOs because we can't feed ourselves otherwise. Right? And they say people like you are so narrow, right, to suggest that there might be a problem here.
I just say we need a transportation fix.
Well, that's right. I mean, the biggest driver of climate change in the United States is the combustion of fuel for transportation. It's absolutely true. So we do need to do something about transportation.
What's number two?
Military, of course.
Electricity probably. Coal and natural gas being burned for
production of meat production, animals.
I think, they say that, but I think what they include in that is all the transportation costs associated with it. So those calves that go on trucks to Nebraska and come back to California as beef in the supermarket, stuff like that.
What they're talking about, what comes out of the rear end of a cow.
They say that. I would wonder. I'd love to look at that because, I think that we don't want industrial agriculture because it is very, very destructive. But I think included in the calculation of how damaging it is transportation costs. What about Chilean?
A great subject for Let's Talk Radio.
Hey.
Eddie, Geoengineering 663-8492.
Do give us a call. Let us know what you think about all this. It was spurred to this. I just read this New York Times article, and it was about the Harvard gathering conference that they had on solar engineering. And these are the points that this guy brings up. The world is not cutting emissions fast enough to prevent global temperatures from spiking into dangerous territory. With Mr. Trump pushing the United States, the world's second largest emitter after China, away from mitigation commitments, geoengineering looks even more compelling. If the United States, this is from UN Assistant Secretary General on Climate Change, if the U.S. starts going backwards and not going forward fast enough in terms of emission reductions, then more and more people will start talking about these options. Of course, the big question is who governs it. Who's, when you're tinkering with the atmosphere, who gets to do it and who gets to oversee it, and who gets to say you can't do this?
Well, it's the contract. Well, okay, so this is the guy who came up with cap and trade, which is people who like cap and trade say they're against geoengineering, but they're ideologically linked ideas. They're both about expanding markets and allowing market dynamics to solve these human-created problems. He said, well, cap and trade won't work because it's unenforceable. How do you know how much people are emitting? Oh, take those Volkswagen cars, right? Everyone said, oh, they're so great, and blah, blah, blah. It turns out they cheated.
They're little diesels.
Yeah, well, how much cheating goes on all the time with all these schemes? And so you don't know unless you know. Do you know where your food comes from? Do you know where your electricity and your heat comes from? Do you know where your water comes from? These are the kind of essential questions that people individually but also collectively have to involve themselves in, because there's so little individuals can do. Rich people in West Marin can set up their Groove Palace with the solar panels and the batteries and then this, that, and the other thing. But collectively, this is an activity we all have to engage in, because if we're going to do it at scale, we're going to need to work together on it.
Well, the truth is we don't really need to geoengineer the atmosphere. All we need to do is conventional things that we're doing. Just cease to do the things we're now cutting down trees, etc.
Burning gas and coal. Here's a great example. Like it's like diabetes, right? It's like America's perverse relationship with healthcare. It says consume all these horrible foods, destroy your body, and then we'll come in with dialysis, or we'll come in with a transplant. We'll come in with some kind of high-tech intervention to solve the problem, rather than put the Coca-Cola down, right? Okay, that works too.
I just have a question. Talking about meat production, is that as bad as swearing?
Oh, you're off the air again, buddy.
How dare you? But a naughty boy.
So the worry, of course, is that that the money that will go into this will not go into other mitigation efforts, right? I mean, because it's relatively cheap. There's somewhere in all these papers I've been, which I'm going to throw away into the recycle bin. Oh dear. Somewhere that says for $5 billion. You could do one of, this solar radiation management scheme of spraying calcite or something up there to neutralize some of the acids and also to make the sky more reflective. You could do that for the planet. $5 billion a year. I mean, it's
how much would it cost to get a volcano?
Well, this is what spurred them. See, it was Mount Pinatubo. They saw the effects of the whole planet cooled for down like half a degree or something for a couple of years, and then up it went again as we kept on adding to it all. But if it's true that we are adding to the change of the climate, do we believe that? If you don't believe that, give us a call.
663-8492.
We will listen, and we will be polite, honest.
I mean, geoengineering is the last kind of it is a Star Trek fantasy, and indeed the final frontier of neoliberalism.
But it's so easy. I mean, I'm reading all these. I don't know how many dozen articles.
They're
all saying this is really cheap. The only thing that's holding us back is who gets to do it, who governs it.
Well, this is the way the coastal liberals are like the Texas libertarians. It's rich people that do not want to have to submit to popular control, because that inhibits the great wealth that they have, the great power they have individually. So they just want to do what they're going to do, and they don't want the government to interfere. In the same way that the Texas libertarian gazillionaires want to have small government, these people want to have small government.
I really admire your belief in popular control.
Well, you're right to say that it's deeply problematic or flawed. It is a really difficult question, but I'd rather that be our difficult question. How do we make democratic institutions function, not what might be the unintended consequences, which there almost certainly will be, and they're almost certainly unknowable, of doing these kind of crazy experiments.
This is, thankfully, what the universities are doing right now is all these computer models. They're just running all these models all the time with various chemicals that get sprayed that will be sprayed into the atmosphere and see what happens, right, in the computer modeling. But really... Who knows?
It is,
especially. But we do know what will happen if we stop cutting down the Amazon.
Well, and
or stop driving smoky cars. Cars that emit CO2. I mean, the CO2 levels that are rising. And of course, wonderful piece of news this morning. Trump is naming BP's ex-defense lawyer as the top Department of Justice environment attorney.
Well, there you go.
Nice.
I think your point about trying to base a real-world experiment on a calculation or a computation, this bit of history has always haunted me since the first time I read it. The tests of the atomic bombs that the Americans carried out, they were not certain whether or not they would ignite the atmosphere and destroy all life on Earth. And on the basis of a computation, on the basis of a calculation, they said, no, it won't happen. Let's go ahead with this experiment. So that's the new crazy world we live in.
And yet they did it, right?
And they did
destroy the world. Let's do it anyway.
Well, the calculation said it'd be fine. And so, yeah, but this is in the mentality also of the philanthropists. You need to think about this as just, a deep cultural kind of problem that we have. So take the Gates Foundation and their geoengineering. They also like to do other things. So, just as the same kind of theme, not on the type of geoengineering, they came into Oakland schools and said, well, small schools are best, so we want to break up all your big schools, and we'll fund it. And so, with their funding, Oakland did break up all its big schools. And then after a few years, the Gates Foundation got bored with it, and so they pulled their funding. So Oakland had to smash all the schools back together again, and go in the exact opposite direction. So when you have a rich guy or rich woman based public policy initiatives, these are the kinds of, when they get bored with the idea, well, what then? Yeah. So that's why it has to come, I think, through our democratic institution.
And this is KWMR, Point Reyes Station, 89.9 Bolinas, 90.5 Point Reyes, 89.9 Bolinas, 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley, and we've already gone through half an hour. Good heavens, it goes quickly, doesn't it? KWMR is supported by the Pacific Sun, Marin's Arts and News Weekly, online at pacificsun.com. And programming support for KWMR is provided by the San Geronimo Valley Community Center, providing human services, cultural enrichment, and educational programs to the people of the San Geronimo Valley in western Marin County. Since 1969, online at sgvcc.org. That's sgvcc.org. And we also are supported by Shelter Publications, publishing books in West Marin for 46 years. Publications include Lloyd Kahn's Shelter, Builders of the Pacific Coast, and Tiny Homes, as well as Bob Anderson's Stretching. More information about Shelter Publications available at their website, shelterpub.com, and their blog, theshelterblog.com. That's THE shelterblog.com. Thank you to all our underwriters and
Did
to
you
our
say
listeners.
the phone number again? Did you give that?
No,
Which one? Oh, our phone number is 663-415-663-8492. Do give us a call if you have concerns or if you support the idea of geoengineering, of efforts to change the atmosphere to make it more, reflective or less acidic. That's what they're thinking with calcite. Yeah. But the funny thing about calcite, as I remember from high school chemistry classes, you add chalk, calcium carbonate to like hydrochloric acid, and it goes, and what's coming off is carbon dioxide. Why would...
Well,
Why?
Well, okay,
here it is. It's an abstract.
But here's the point.
From the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, from their journal. It's all about putting calcite up into the stratosphere for solar to neutralize the acid that's up in the atmosphere, but it'll produce more carbon dioxide.
Well, but then again, the intention was never to reduce it, right? I mean, the intention is maybe to make the atmosphere more reflective, but it isn't to reduce the actual emissions of carbon. And and they don't. I mean, the earlier kind of neoliberal phase of this cap and trade just collapsed in California this year. It was supposed to raise at the last auction $500 million. It raised $18 million. But talking about the subversion of public institutions and democracy, most of your politicians are borderline personalities. They are, quote, entrepreneurs of themselves. And the billionaire comes to them and says, hey, I'll fund this and I'll do this and you get your press release and you don't have to seek anybody's approval or you don't have to go and say, hey, we need to raise taxes to fund this new idea. You don't even have to have an idea because I'm going to give it to you. And you know what the politicians say? Yeah, we'll do that. And, then the billionaire gets bored and off they go.
It's a good pitch.
I love that, entrepreneurial of themselves.
I sell the song of myself, my update of Whitman for 2017.
It's like the Internet of everything.
Anyway,
so apparently all this geoengineering interest is really spiking right now, and I think it's partly to do with the advent of our present president and his policies in the EPA.
It had to be started way before that.
Right. Well, they've been talking about it for a long time, but I mean, all these articles came out since December that I found in the past 2 days doing my homework.
Isn't this just another example of just everybody wanting a quick fix?
Yes, exactly. The techno fix.
And that makes money.
A cheap, quick fix that can make somebody a bunch of money. Yes, exactly. And caller, you are on the air. What's your name, please?
Oh, thank you. My name is Pam. I'm from Belize. Hi. And I have two questions, please. Yeah. One of them has to do with Governor Brown being in China right now, exploring sustainable energy production. Mm-hmm. And my question is, who has inexpensive solar energy generating equipment that you know of? That's my first question. I understand they're creating that in China. And secondly, then my question has to do with the geoengineering and the chemtrails in the sky. I have no question that they're gridding the skies and everything. Anyone who has any life experience and knows what real clouds look like know that that's happening. So do we know of anything besides calcite up there in the sky?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well,
and why the gridding of the?
Why the gridding? Well, if that's
gridding?
what they're doing, well, they do. You get these checkerboard patterns,
okay, sure.
And then the sky just completely silvers over. And apparently the theories are that they're using aluminum oxide and other metals. I think the people who are trying to find out if this is actually happening are doing testing on the ground downwind from where these heavy chemtrail things are happening, and they're finding elevated levels of aluminum, certainly, and I think barium sometimes. So who knows? They're using metals because they're reflective and they're cheap. The China solar energy...
Well,
I don't know.
By the way, Governor Brown's trip to China was funded by private businesses, which should raise some eyebrows. But the other side of that question to me is, think about the way your electricity bill works now. So right now, you make these monthly payments. They go to service the debt that was incurred by the utilities to build power plants. Now, the idea of, say, Marin Clean Energy, which is a community choice aggregation, is that monthly bill payment you would make would go to service the debt on financed renewables and efficiency products for your home. So now the county is the mechanism by which they come and put solar panels up on your home or your business, or they offer you, energy efficiency products or measures, and you still pay your bill every month, these little payments, but instead of it going to Wall Street to pay off the debt for a private corporation, it goes to the county to pay off the debt on these financed renewable and efficiency products that you ultimately will own in time. That was the purpose of Marin Clean Energy. Why it doesn't do that yet is another big, long question. But that is ultimately the sort of the vision of why that law was created and the people that fought for so many years to bring Marin Clean Energy into existence. That's was the vision. Again, and this speaks to Steve's point about democracy. Politicians are only as honest as you make them. And so, that's something to get engaged in. In the case of Marin Clean Energy, you can go to all their board meetings. In the case of PG&E, you're not invited. So that's the difference. And so that would be my hope in democracy. It would have nothing to do with the federal level. And if you examine Barack Obama's record, there's nothing to be proud of there. And obviously Trump is so grotesque that, I see people react so strongly to it. But at the local level, there is hope. At least that's the way I see it. So.
Pam, do you have any, you asked the questions, do you have thoughts about the answers?
No, I'm exploring for myself and for my community inexpensive solar energy generating equipment. And so I don't know where it is. I don't know where to find it. And that's why
solar energy generating.
Well, if you're interested just on a personal level, there's always that deal up in Hopland. I forget the name of it. You know that one, Paul, the big solar center there. Yeah, I mean, you can. They would be good people to call. But like I would say is that if we do it collectively and we finance it, it means that we'll be able to do a lot more and we'll be able to pay it off on our bills rather than, as the case right now, which is somebody has $20,000 in their bank account, they can have solar panels, and everybody else who doesn't have that access to capital cannot. So it's just about rethinking this mechanism for how we pay for energy into one that builds local renewable energy and puts it in the ownership of local businesses and residents and communities, rather than the same kind of a mechanism which sends all that money to Wall Street and pays off the debt on investments for private corporations.
So as far as I'm concerned, the jury's still out on this trip, and I would assume future trips of Brown and others to China, to see what they can bring back and what kinds of partnerships can be made, to make this kind of energy available if the goal is to, create a sustainable present and future. So I'm interested to see what he's going to come back with. I'm not about government, but this is a possibility.
I was very surprised to learn that 32% of Kansas electricity comes from wind.
Oh, it was big there, sure. But, I mean, I'd say, those technologies are on the shelf right now today. The reason that they're not being deployed fast enough and in the right way is a political reason. It's not a reason about technology or the price of
we
energy.
understand that. But there's been a change now. There's been a change.
I certainly hope so. But, Governor Brown's still for fracking, right, too? So you take carbon out of the power supply one place, you put it in another.
Yeah, I was wondering about that the other day because it doesn't seem to...
Regarding fracking, I was reading that there's a shortage of sand, which is a key component of fracking. So
shortage of sand.
A shortage of sand.
Well, I'd just say one of Jerry Brown's favorite lines privately is, get real. And why does he say get real? He says get real because everybody, in the sound of my voice, all three of you, drives every day. I didn't drive yesterday, but I'm a weirdo. And 234 million people are going to fly this summer. Right? And so everybody likes to go after the thing that they don't depend on. So people who love to take multiple plane trips a year would tell me to be a vegetarian. I don't take any plane trips, and I fly or drive as little as possible, so I tell them not to fly. But ultimately, that's a kind of arid debate. And, I think what we have to talk about is how collectively we solve these problems so that transportation systems can function without fuel, that people can work from home rather than having to commute, that people can get the food because if you raise your beef and lamb and chicken, et cetera, locally, I think there's lots of ways that you can manage the carbon impact of that activity. What is unsustainable is fishing, right? The oceans are dying. So, there's solutions to these
being
problems.
mined, actually, by the Chinese.
Oh, sure.
They're mining them.
Mining.
Oh, that's right, for a new energy source. Yeah, I saw that.
Manganese nodules, and
It's this.
and we want, and they're going to be.
mining
They
the
may
fish.
be drilling. They may be drilling off on the Farallones.
But
out
they're,
in the,
Yeah,
they're
well,
mining
there's
the
a letter in
fish,
the light.
though. They're
Oh,
just
sure.
huge nets that just take everything in their way.
Oh, yeah.
No selection at all.
yeah.
Now, when there was a sushi restaurant in Flint, Michigan, I knew the time was up for the ocean.
Anyway, Pam, thank you for calling in. It was good of you to call in. It's always nice to.
Thank you,
hear
Pam. And
from
check out that. It's up in Hopland, California. I forget what it's called, but you type in Hopland and solar.
Charles. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's Charles. I want to question this this notion that you have is, well, this is what I'm doing.
Right. Well, I wouldn't want to become a vegetarian, and the people who like to take 5 vacations a year, they don't want to stop flying. So yeah, but I mean, I suggest that whatever. I'm just being silly. But do you have a question? No. 663-8492. Interrupt
Call
Steve
in,
and Charles's conversation. But yeah, a quarter of a billion people flying this summer. That's insane.
Well, my question is our personal activities, do they really have an effect on the larger destruction that's hitting the planet? Okay, so I don't drive, but way back in the 70s, I was taking the bottoms of all my cans off, and taking the labels off. And a neighbor said, for every can that you're taking the label off, there's a company there making 1 million cans.
Well, okay, so this line goes, if everybody just changes a little bit, the world will change a little bit. I would say, no, I don't think about this as blame the consumer, right? You're in a world in which you have limited consumer choice. Yeah. And so the question is, well, how do we change the things that are available? And for me, you do that through democratic institutions.
Well, we could clean our act up completely, but you still have India, which is a major source of...
You lead by example.
But
I mean, they followed our example in terms of pollution. Maybe they'd follow our example in terms of doing something else.
But it's all those cows.
No, it's not. I mean, this is it's all these cows. It's all those planes. I mean, do you see how this works, Stephen? No, you see how it works, because you say it's all those cows, and I say 234 billion or a million people are going to take flights this summer. Well, so it's all those flights.
Here's a wonderful thing to do. A friend of mine took a trip recently on a plane to see her family, and
I'm taking one tomorrow.
I went on flightaware.com. You go on there and you check out how many flights are in the air at any one time. It's just incredible to watch this, and they all
there are
come
cows
in
on
bursts.
those planes.
Do the math; it's more efficient.
And if there are cows on those planes,
do the math.
Can you imagine? Can you
Flying
imagine all the
is
cows
actually
are going to
more
fly?
efficient to get the people from one place to the other.
Why get them from one place to the other? There's nothing there.
We have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
Sally.
Sally.
No, I didn't do the upswing on the second syllable this time.
Sally.
Trying to attain some gravitas.
Sally.
Gravlak. Actually, I'm flying to Russia for Gravlak. And I'm bringing my pet cow.
If you can only get the really good stuff there. And has your cow ever seen Russia? I mean, it should live a little too.
My cow is going to procreate in Russia.
Oh, excellent.
There you go.
So per your squabble, I think both are actually true. I have actually heard this, that that this sort of clearing of the rainforest and putting into place millions of cattle is actually problematic. But since I was pretty young, I've always looked askance at the space program, and then secondarily at airplanes. It's sort of a common sense thing. The space program is just such a... I mean, everybody loves it, and I shouldn't say anything against it. But I always worried about the rocket boosters.
Well,
In the atmosphere.
It's hydrogen, oxygen, isn't it?
I have no idea.
Isn't that what they use for fuel?
It doesn't look good, does it?
I
It's
mean,
so
I know
rare.
what it is. It's just sort of like a hunk of burning heat, and I'm not talking about like a Barry White song.
Oh, hunk of burn. I
But
remember.
Sally, why are they deforesting the Amazon?
Well, they're doing it to create beef to send to foreign markets and
For
soybeans.
McDonald's, basically.
And palm oil. They're growing palm
Palm oil, but for
oil.
years
Not in Brazil.
before, I mean, for years,
It's in
for decades
Indonesia.
and decades before we heard about
They're
palm
burning.
oil, we've heard about the deforestation in order to feed cattle, raise cattle to work with, I guess McDonald's or whatever. Ooh, pardon my complicated communication system here from my secret underground lair. I think that is the deforestation is just, we've been hearing about it for decades and decades and fighting it, and it just seems like all for naught. So.
Well, there's a lot of confusion.
It's easy to be disheartened by.
Well, that issue is confused specifically by people like Stuart Brand, who said that it was being deforested for small farms, which was wrong. It was being deforested for huge agribusiness
Factory farms.
to ship beef and soya to other countries. Now, if Brazil worried about how to feed Brazil, and the United States worried how to feed the United States, and we took out this element that the purpose of agriculture is to create massive surpluses to be shipped around the world. 80% of the almond crop of California goes to China. We fly Monterey strawberries to Japan, right? Okay, so this flown-in strawberries. The answer is, Japanese, you want strawberries? Grow your own strawberries, right? But now that means that a business goes away. That means that somebody is economically impacted. And I would just say we're going to have to pick losers here, because either everybody loses or there's some corporations that's business has to go away.
Good point.
And it's how do we get to that point? You get to that point with a solution. You can't do it through criticizing people and their patterns of consumption. I mean, it's like I like to tease people about flying, but then again, I eat beef. So, whatever. It's kind of a silly back and forth with something like that. But
what about your democracy? How does that fit into these solutions, these winners and losers?
I just explained, right? I mean, to the caller, was it Pam or Tam? Was how you turned your old utility bill through a law that was passed at the state level into this new local authority that's able, instead of you financing PG&E's investments, you would be financing local community investments and improvements to your home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, through your bill the same way you do it today. It's just that instead of pooling that money to make a bigger profit for Wall Street and pay off their debt, it would be pooling that money to localize our energy supply, or we could do it for our food supply, or we could do it for our water supply, you name it, pooling that money to increase the wealth and the democratization and decentralization of that wealth on a local level. It can be done. But
which is the business that you're in.
It is the business that I am. Yes, I'm plugging myself. But so you can do those things, but they're complicated and they're new. I mean, the thing if you accept the dynamics of cap and trade, if you accept the dynamics of geoengineering, you are in this neoliberal frame. The only thing that works is growth. Right, new business, and new markets. Right, not what's the outcome that we actually want to achieve and how do we get there? Because that would say
who's going to make money off.
It would say we need to reduce carbon emissions, and so so you would never come up with a solution that says we're not going to reduce carbon emissions. We're just going to have space mirrors tonight on Space Mirrors. I mean, who doesn't like a space mirror?
Sally, are you still there?
Well, I'm sorry, I was gazing into my space mirror.
Very dangerous. You look great. The lighting is always great in your space mirror, I guess.
It's really, really forgiving, the lighing. It's incredible.
Amazing.
Maybe you need to find...
I just bought a franchise.
A fine spray mist of carbonite. No, calcite. And I found this Harvard scientist taking geoengineering into the field. They are going to go to, where are they going? Tucson, the desert near Tucson, and they're going to do one of these balloon things.
Oh, great.
70 miles high, and spraying something in the air. And apparently 2 of these experiments have been done, one in California don't know where or when, the other in Russia, and the third one, which you talked about earlier, Spice, was cancelled, was scuttled. But,
we keep talking about experiments. Imagine if it works, what it would be like to look into the sky.
Well, so here's the chemtrail people who think chemtrails exist, and I'm on the fence about that. Say that the sky is already changed. You know, if you think back to your childhood, what color was the sky? You know, now a sunny day is a kind of silvery sky. It's not this golden sky that I remember from my youth.
Well,
Maybe that's because I was from foggy old London.
Well,
town.
growing up in
Never saw the sun.
Well, growing up in an industrial town like Flint, you had beautiful oranges and magentas, and all the pollution would create a really great sunset. But no, I mean the problem is, of course, like if you wake up in the morning, as I do in West Marin. How would you know there was any problem? Ocean looks the same as it used to. You know, it doesn't. You know, the sky. It's still beautiful out. You know, chemtrail or no, it's still a heck of a day.
The oyster farmers know.
I have a question, and then I'll amscray so someone else can call. But what about the idea of having emissions controls on these airplane engines? Is that a possibility? Because airplanes are not going to stop, I don't think.
Well, I think they will, because I think people are caught in a positive feedback loop where they're always trying to deal with the big disruptions in our society through getting away through travel and vacations. The problem is that the fundamental problem with our society is dislocation itself. So the cure makes the disease worse. And I think in about 3 years, everybody who travels all the time, their head is just going to explode. And that is going to be excellent carbon sequestration.
I'm guessing that emissions controls on jet engines, they would worry about the loss of power because there would be a loss of energy in some way.
I just want to bring the numbers in because I was shocked to learn that flying is a very efficient way to get people from one place to the other.
Compared to what, sedan chairs? I mean,
compared to other forms of transportation, large
Tuk-tuks.
Tuk-tuks? You could say it. I mean, I have no dispute. It depends what you mean by efficient.
But then also, again, I go back to this flightaware.com. It's really incredible. If you look at it, if you play it on a 24-hour basis, they run you through a 24-hour thing. There are these blooms of aircraft at like 6 in the morning or 4 in the morning from where UPS and FedEx have their main airports. So people are staying at home more, like you or me, and ordering things online so that they can come in a plane from Kentucky or wherever they come from,
St. Louis and Memphis,
and delivered to my door.
You know, before we leave, I just wanted
incredible.
An observation. I heard it from Charles's mouth. It comes up before he says it can be done.
Well, yeah, I think it can. And I would just say with airline travel, why? I mean, like the high-speed train
just travel, though, right? I mean, it's not just fun travel.
Well, but even the business side of it.
Well, wait a minute.
Why do people have to go from L.A. to San Francisco?
Wait a minute.
For
Gail's mother is having her 90th birthday, so we're going to Florida and celebrate.
Yeah.
I guess.
Why don't you just let her move in?
You guys, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I've been flying since I was about 11 years old, back and forth across the country due to that charming tradition in America known as divorce. And so I was schlepped back and forth on a plane twice a year. Those planes used to be largely empty.
Right.
Now, planes are, I think this is to Stevie's point of efficiency, these planes are packed solid with human bodies. Mm-hmm. So they changed everything to the hub system, and the planes are all packed. So you don't have. So it is more efficient than it used to be in that sense. The idea that you're moving hundreds of people at one time. I think that's the efficiency thing.
I bet Sally, you flew Braniff Air, but
Eastern Airlines.
Not Braniff with Sonny Liston and Andy Warhol. It's a great poster.
Or American.
The problem is if you love somebody, live in the same town that they do. That would be my advice.
If you hate somebody like my mother and father did, you have to live 3,000 miles away and then hold the child back and forth like a birdie.
Well, of course, but then if I have it my way and we abolish air travel, then you'll have an excuse. You want to say, I'd love to visit. I would really love to visit. I know it's your 90th, but I can't. It's too inefficient to take the train.
You are so parochial.
Yeah, well, why not?
that is where change begins.
When you
is
say
in-
parochial, right, what has all this
community.
tourism done? It's made the world more like every place else. That means McDonald's is everywhere. It means that the biodiversity is collapsing. There are tree diseases that are killing off Italian olives right now, right, that come from the United States.
Right.
But Italy's so nice. Can't we
And
go to
brown
Italy?
snakes from heading into Guam.
And beetles
killing everything.
from Asia. And,
the
but you
Norway
still-
rat.
Well,
Norwegian rat.
Norwegian rat.
Well, so I
you
mean,
still can't get a decent cup of tea in Marbella. That's a terrible thing, isn't it? It's just not right. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. But no, I mean, that's the problem. So at what cost? Cost to the environment in terms of carbon emission, 100 tons of kerosene burned so you can go to Asia, cost in biodiversity, cost in the homogenization of the whole world, right? McDonald's for all.
This is why I'm very disheartened.
Huh? Don't
It can be done.
disheartened.
It can be done. It can be, to dishearten Steve Kurwitz can be done. I would just like to.
Anyway, thank you so much,
Thank you.
everybody, for listening and calling in. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Stephen. Always fun. And, so watch the skies because Harvard is going to be doing some geoengineering, spraying things into the skies. KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Thank you, everybody.